Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Céline Tarov, Advisor Digital Innovation at FEDIL and the Secretary General of Cloud Community Europe Luxembourg, and I will be your Master of Ceremony during this conference. It is my pleasure to welcome you for this joint conference organized by Cloud Community Europe Luxembourg, FEDIL and ICT Luxembourg. The conference will be on the GAIA X initiative, and we have a very impressive speaker lineup. For your information, 2 speakers will be joining us remotely. So we will ask for your understanding when we will make some video switch. And without any further ado, I am pleased to leave the floor to Yves Reding, Chairman of Cloud Community Europe Luxembourg, Vice Chairman of ICT Luxembourg and CEO of EBRC.
Thank you, Céline. Dear participants, dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our live stream event. Our topic today is the GAIA X project, European Union's most important digital aspiration in a generation. 160 participants should be connected to this conference. Most of you are based in Luxembourg, active in the private sector, but also public and academic. Thank you for your interest and participation. As introduced by Céline, this conference is co-organized by 3 associations. Cloud Community Europe Luxembourg, formerly called Eurocloud Luxembourg. Our association is sister associations of Eurocloud Deutschland and Eurocloud France. Second, ICT Luxembourg, the Luxembourg Digital Alliance. ICT Luxembourg is an umbrella association of 14 associations active in the digital field in Luxembourg. ABBL, ALFI, CLUSIL, APSI, Cloud Community Europe, FTL, LOFT, LUCX, OPAL, APDL, LuxProvide, FGT, Let's Block, and SNT. And of course, FEDIL. FEDIL is the voice of Luxembourg industry with more than 600 members. Cloud Community Europe is also a sectorial member supported by FEDIL. I would thank FEDIL and the Chamber of Commerce for the support for hosting this conference. Digital is developing at an exponential rate and generates exponential innovations, exponential disruptions and business changes. The COVID crisis has speeded the adoption of digital technologies by several years. And giant tech companies are clearly the winner of this crisis. Unfortunately, none of the top 15 digital companies is European. There will be a before and an after the coronavirus outbreak in global economics and politics. COVID-19 exposed dependence of Europe for the supply of essential resources in the health sector. But at the same time, COVID exposed increased dependence of Europe on global digital leaders. Today, European governments and corporates are becoming aware of the importance of data ownership and digital sovereignty. There is a strong risk that the next decisive technological stage may be entirely shaped by non-European actors, which often do not share our core values, traditions, and standards, or try to undermine them. The potential consequences in terms of prosperity, privacy, and security cannot be underestimated. In summary, the risk for Europe is to become a digital colony. Hopefully, this crisis has been an opportunity to boost Europe, and especially the European digital market. Among European initiatives, we can mention enhance Europe's technological sovereignty in data, artificial intelligence, 5G, defense, space technology, lead on a new Digital Services Act and Data Act, strengthens European cybersecurity. Today, we will focus on the European Infrastructure project GAIA X, build a European data infrastructure based on European values and standards. We need something like an Airbus for artificial intelligence, said German Economy Minister Peter Altmaier in November last year. The GAIA X project has been officially launched on the 4th of June this year. In this press conference, Peter Altmaier said, GAIA X is a part of the European digital moonshot. It's a starting point of a European data ecosystem. In the same press conference, Bruno Le Maire added, we are not China, we are not the US, we are European countries with their own values and their own economic interests we want to defend. To reflect the GAIA X project and its importance on data economy, we will have the pleasure to welcome the Minister of the Economy, Franz Fayot, who will open the speeches. Our keynote speaker, Andreas Weiss, Director of Eurocloud Deutschland, our sister association, will explain the GAIA X project. And to give you a global overview on this complex project, we have invited representative of the European Commission, Frederico Milani, DG Connect, and local public authorities, Mario Grotz, Ministry of Economy. One of the first German GAIA X mover, Robert Bosch, will be represented by Nick Scharman, and Paul Wirth, the Luxembourgish company, will be represented by Fabrice Hansen. And last but not least, we will welcome a renowned expert on digital sovereignty, Paul Timmers, visiting fellow at Oxford University. Paul was also director at the European Commission DG Connect. All speakers will be invited at a one-table discussion, and the panel will be moderated by Charlotte Boutelier, Head of Marketing at Far West. Dear speakers, thank you again for your support. Céline, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yves. So as you mentioned, we have the great honor to welcome our Minister of the Economy, Mr. Franz Fayot, but he couldn't join us physically today. Therefore, he recorded his address in order to give us Luxembourg's perspective on the data economy.
Dear guests, good afternoon and welcome. It is my pleasure to open this conference about GAIA X, organized in close collaboration between Cloud Community Europe, Luxembourg, ICT Luxembourg and Federated. Efficient collaboration drives success, and I am glad to see that the collaboration between the actors in the Luxembourg digital sector is strong and promising. I also appreciate the presence of participants from all over Europe, especially from Oxford, Brussels and Germany. Welcome to Luxembourg. A warm welcome also to all other participants over video or physically present today. Data is the cornerstone of the current transformation of our society and will be at the center of our common future. Data will enable us to handle resources more effectively because we will be able to handle and monitor everything more precisely. Water consumption, energy and other precious resources of our planet. The potential value of data is tremendous. Society at large benefits from data-related innovation and research. Therefore, Luxembourg has made the development of its data economy a national priority. In 2019, the Ministry of the Economy issued its data-driven innovation strategy for the development of a trusted and sustainable economy. Based on its vision, Luxembourg is developing its data ecosystem to help every organization, private or public, to unlock the opportunities offered by the data economy. Luxembourg has implemented the prerequisites for the data economy, like data centers, a broadband strategy to connect individuals and companies, cybersecurity awareness and capabilities, strong education and research organizations. At the beginning of 2021, Luxembourg will also put in operation a 10 petaflop supercomputer called Meluxina that will be at the disposal of its businesses, public sector and research. Ladies and gentlemen, A dynamic data ecosystem should provide short research to industry collaborations. In the post-COVID world, collaboration will be critical to strengthen our recovery. We need the right tools and services to be successful. The data cloud is a prime example of a collaborative tool. The cloud offers the flexibility and the mobility to address new and complex challenges. Cloud-based applications are inclusive as they open the access for SMEs to a full range of IT services. Cloud can scale and manage massive volumes of data and can federate individual ideas into big innovations. The volume of available data has grown exponentially and has given way to more sophisticated algorithms like artificial intelligence. The importance and the implications of these technologies reach far beyond any national borders. Data must be protected when crossing borders and when changing legal jurisdiction. The respect of ownership and the protection of personal data represent a central part in a successful setup of a vibrant data economy. At European level, cloud makes a significant contribution to the goals of the European Commission's data strategy, digital strategy and industrial strategy. Currently, the European Commission works on different initiatives to create a clear, single European framework of rules and best practices for cloud use in Europe. A central initiative is a European Federation of Cloud Infrastructures and Services. A secure interconnection with other data spaces in Europe should be a central part of any data valorization strategy. The rights of users and owners of data must be protected and the European Union's digital sovereignty must be restored. GAIA X is an initiative towards that aim. It will be the starting point of a new European data ecosystem. This new ecosystem will give users a freedom of choice for the service provider that best suits their needs. This ecosystem will respect and enforce European values. High-performance computing is another essential component of this data ecosystem. HPC will deliver the computing power that processes the data delivered by the cloud. Europe has boosted its supercomputing capacity with a network of 8 world-class supercomputers to be launched in 2021. Luxembourg was one of the initiators of the European HPC initiative, and with Meluxina, we will host one of the supercomputers joining the Euro HPC network. The combination of GAIA X, cloud and HPC will create a unique constellation for data valorization in Europe. They are complementary elements of the future-oriented European digital ecosystem that we need to address current socio-ecological challenges. I warmly encourage a collaboration between the Luxembourg cloud providers and GAIA X. Only together will we be able to rise up and give Europe a leading role in the next digital decade. Let me conclude by inviting all the conference participants to take an active role in the build-up of the European data ecosystem that will carry the ambition of federating the forces in Europe. Together, we can convert data volume into benefits at all levels for everyone in Europe. I wish you all a very successful conference.
So now, dear guests, allow me to introduce our first keynote speaker, who will present the GAIA X initiative in itself. I am pleased to welcome Andreas Weiss, Director of Eurocad Deutschland, Director of Digital Business Model Division at ECO, Association of the Internet Industry. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Celine. Thank you for the invitation by Yves, and I'm very happy to provide you some insights about GAIA X. Those who already attended such sessions, stay relaxed for the next half hour, take a coffee or tea, and all others, you are warmly invited to get some insights around GAIA X and where we are right now and where we want to go. And I prepared a couple of slides, but in the meantime, I will give you already some initial information. It's not just since COVID that discussing the dependency within Europe around a few offerings for digital services. It was already back in 2018 when a group, as part of the German industry platform 4.0, discussed how can we get more sovereignty on our data and on our services. The reason here is a lot of companies, at least those who are in the production area, understood we have to do something with digital services. They set up their industrial IoT, digital twins, and so on, and they are massively collecting data within their production processes. But now we are getting then to the point how to monetize these data, how to make more value out of this data, and how to get access to those services, for example, artificial intelligence, to move forward with the innovation cycle. And based on this, there were clearly concerns about the sharing of data with other parties without having appropriate rules in place and without having technical means to find an appropriate enforcement about data sovereignty. I can take it? Okay, and here we go with the slides. Now, and then this was the initiation to consider a kind of European data infrastructure. Data infrastructure means we need the combination of the infrastructure layer as we know it by cloud, and also the data management layer and all the advanced services around it. And I will give you a short overview, first of all, from the user side, as I said, from the industry who would like to make use out of digital services, their use cases and requirements, but also then the provider perspective from the European side, because we have a lot of major cloud providers and digital service providers, but they are very specialized in some extent, and probably we can make more out of it by joining the forces which are already here in Europe. And therefore we have then the outlook to build up an official entity around GAIA X and the outlook, and of course your invitation to participate in GAIA X and to contribute on this story, because this is a multi-stakeholder process and every voice should be heard to move forward with this very interesting approach. Now, looking at the motivation and the challenges for the European digital economy, as I said, all those who are collecting data in their processes, they are in the edge and they look forward, what can I do within my decentralized processing locations? How can I aggregate data and how can I prepare them to be used within cloud environments or within different smart services? And then they are facing multiple technology stacks, which means you need a lot of expertise to deal with all the different technologies, not just by the hyperscalers, but also by the various services. And this leads us then to a kind of lack of transparency about the storage of data and the processing of data. And this is, as I said, not only related to personal information, which is covered by the GDPR, but also for industry data, because we have to consider such data as intellectual property. And beside this, then what is the applicable jurisdiction when we deal with the data, and how to support the interoperability, because we want to avoid the vendor lock-in situation just by using certain services with specific APIs, which cannot be used in other environments. And as we heard from the European Commission as part of their strategy to build up European data spaces to break the silos between the different domains and to interconnect data spaces to provide more value out of these assets. Yeah, we need to consider how to build up data spaces which can be interconnected, but still with a promise to keep the digital sovereignty of the owner of the data. And this is quite difficult, and therefore GAIA X is clearly addressing three main topics. One is how to achieve appropriate data sovereignty, how to keep data in Europe and keep the availability of data, because this is a key asset for the European industry, and most and foremost, how to serve for innovation, because this is really the key target. It's not to replicate another cloud business because we need to support the development of innovation by GAIA X. And therefore, we expose a set of principles according to the European values. We are all aware that GDPR is really a success model, how to deal and how to manage data in the digital space, at least when we are talking about personal information. But then we need to make another step and also apply appropriate rules for non-personal information. And this is required by a, let me say, framework of authenticity and trust, but also beside the high-level term digital sovereignty, self-determination, because I need still to keep control about my business, and I cannot hand over the control to third-party providers if I'm using digital services. Modularity and interoperability, this is also part of the EU agenda in terms of free flow of data and working towards a digital market, also in conjunction with the free market access. And of course, we have to respect European data protection by default because it's a law. And this brings us to a, let me say, still simple view, the combination of a sovereign infrastructure with a sovereign data exchange, and this in respect to EU policies and code of conducts and regulation and other emerging schemes which are relevant for the digital space. As I said, data sovereignty is crucial, but we also want to target the reduction of dependencies because it's not a good feeling if you just have 3 or 4 choices. You need always a plan B. And just in the COVID times, we see having more choice of services and more options to react on certain circumstances. It is much more reasonable for the economy to deal with the challenges they are facing anyway. And therefore, we need appropriate level of transparency. And this, in conjunction, is then the key message of GAIA X to build up an ecosystem for digital infrastructures and for data management as an ecosystem for innovation. And looking in more depth into this view, and we already heard it by Minister Fayot, there's quite a lot of services which are seen as part of the infrastructure layer. It's not just about cloud. We're also talking about interconnectivity and interconnection services, but really about high performance computing. When we target all the requirements in the area of artificial intelligence, we need high performance computing to deal with all the mass of data and to support deep learning and machine learning and so on. But beside this, we still see sector-specific clouds which are of relevance, for example, in regulated areas like healthcare and finance. And as I said, the edge is also important. And this leads us into this view of a decentralized ecosystem. It is not just taking care about the connection of data centers, but also to connect all the facilities where data are getting collected and pre-processed. And we need this interaction between the edge services and the cloud services and all the digital smart services and the data spaces and so on. And this is really why we need a kind of ecosystem with a trusted environment. And on the other side, you see this data ecosystem with, again, the data spaces, the smart services like AI, like IoT, analytics, automation, big data, and whatever. And only if we provide an ecosystem where especially the startups and the small companies who are really in the innovation space, if they are getting reduced by the burden for mutual agreements to take care about compliance and all the difficult things around the provisioning of services, then they can really scope on this innovation part and they can provide the services with a reasonable maturity level to be accepted by the industry. And to get into this direction, we feel we are going to feature these GAIA X Federation services. What does it mean? Federation services means we have to take care about appropriate technology and services to address the part of identity and trust management, also to expose a catalog of those services who are in compliance with GAIA X, to support the market to have an appropriate self-determination on those services which are applicable for the needs of the users. And we have to address this very complex part of sovereign data exchange. It is not just sufficient to expose some rules for data management. You need also the technical means for enforcement of data sovereignty. And therefore you need attributes to indicate, if I'm going to share data, I'm sharing it to third parties, but I want still in the position to rule the use cases, to expose rules how to make use of this data. Probably you also want to set a price tag on this data, and you want to also have the opportunity to revoke this access to the data at any time without individual context to each of those who are making use of this data. And this should be then surveyed by a set of compliance rules, also accreditation services. And what we're also aiming as part of the Federation services is a kind of continuous monitoring of this enforcement wherever applicable to, for example, just to understand where is the data processing? Is it still in Europe, or is it flowing out of the borders which are initially indicated? And therefore we need appropriate technical measurements to identify such situations and to react accordingly to such situations. Now, GAIA X from the scratch is always a European project, although it has been initiated in Germany and then in a strong liaison with France. It is always intended to address the European Union and even beyond, because by now we are already talking to other countries like Japan and South Korea and South America, who are also interested in this activity and also have similar challenges to address. And so GAIA X can be really an ecosystem which is far beyond the European borders. And all the member states are invited. I'm very happy that Luxembourg took this opportunity to step into this discussion and hopefully to contribute also for the GAIA X story in the future. And it's really impressive. The first announcement of GAIA X was back in October 2019 on the Digital Summit in Germany. And since this nearly 1 year, there are already 500 participants out of 300 companies who are working on the technical design on GAIA X, and this pro bono. So there's no funding behind it. These activities are really with a commitment on this objectives of data sovereignty, data availability, and innovation. And it's also that 3 or 4 organizations are private companies, and which is also impressive. Half of them are SMEs. So it's not just a party for the big companies, as there's a clear SME footprint in this community, and we are very glad about this. And they are cross over various sectors and of various types of companies. Now, stepping into the user perspective and the use case requirements. Well, first of all, we really ask, what are the use cases who needs GAIA X? Because everything you can do already by today with all the technical means. But if you want to bring it on a large scale with multiple users, you're facing these difficulties I initially announced with compliance rules and also all the technical services which are required to find an appropriate interaction between all involved parties. And what we did as a kind of stock-taking process to showcase some or to collect some use cases, identify their requirements, also separate what is cross-domain requirement and what is domain-specific requirement. And of course, we are going to prioritize those cross-domain requirements, which are then also, which is the input for the further development of GAIA X. And as part of this stock-taking process, we have various domains. You can see, for example, health and industry 4.0, public sector and finance. They are part of the key drivers for the story of GAIA X, or at least they have the most impact by such a GAIA X compatible ecosystem. And we really identify that most of these domains are facing the same challenges, and we are also in the process to take additional requirements which are probably domain specific but of highest relevance to incubate the innovation part, and then turn it into the appropriate requirement for the development of data spaces, and also to build up now some demonstrators who are really showcasing the requirements of the users and the domains with specific use cases. And by this, we are able to move forward in a really agile process. It doesn't make sense to set up now a research project for 3 years, and we are hoping that there will be a reasonable outcome. We need a more iterative approach, and within half a year, if you move forward, within half a year, you need a kind of feedback loop, and then rethink the approach, and probably redefine the priorities. Because in this data ecosystem, we are really facing a lot of challenges to assemble such data spaces, to promote the contribution into these data spaces, and then to build up appropriate services who are making use of these data spaces. Just collecting data is not sufficient. We need to understand, we need to learn out of the data, and we need to provide new services to the economy as part of this activity, and then behind this data ecosystem, then we have all the domain-specific services, which are then, and even a financial service might need access to logistic information or other public data for their risk models and so on, and therefore it's really crucial to overcome the silos and to overcome these barriers between the various domains. And from the provider side, as I said, we have a clear mix of various providers, and I think although they are in a kind of competition in some extent, most of them really understood we need to have a joint agenda, and we need to join the forces to provide very good services and very agile services to the market with all these various requirements, from connection to cloud to high performance computing to edge processing. And we are really hoping that with the establishment of an ecosystem, it's much easier to start on the research part, and then build labs, and then go into a production level, and then scale it up, then just hand it over from one environment to another environment. So with a joint environment, we have a more fluent activity, and we can reduce the cycles of innovation then. And as I said, in between these federation services, just consider the relevance of identities. It's not just human identities, it's also for processes, it's also for sensors. Each of them are identities with appropriate roles and access mechanism. And it's worth to harmonize them. And as we know with EIDAS and other activities, it is really a European approach to provide each member of our community an appropriate ID, instead of having multiple ID providers with less transparency around it. And therefore we need also this level of interoperability. And it's worth to say that all these activities, and what I see here, what I'm saying here with the federation services, this is all open source. Anyone can access this source. Public money, public code. So we also addressing here a reasonable level of transparency, and everything which is done in this area is according to the rules security and privacy by design. Therefore, we are going to specify all these requirements, and this will be then a guiding principle for any other codes which are built up within the GAIA X ecosystem. The Federated catalog, as I said, it's a yellow book for GAIA X services, but of course, any community can take this technology and build up his own catalog. But of course, only those who are awarded with the accreditation process by the GAIA X community, or finally then the entity, they can name themselves as GAIA X compatible services. But we already also recognize that special domains might set up or extend this catalog with their own services because it's of highest relevance for this community. And this then in conjunction with sovereign data services, which are also relevant to have a clear interaction model with the source and the receiver of data, and also in conjunction with the usage rights towards the data to be managed cross over various entities, and also with the requirement to have an appropriate enforcement. Well, saying this, and probably you understand already, if you look at the storage of data and the processing of data, these are two different views, and you can store the data anywhere, and you can process the data anywhere. And this is really where we need to provide more transparency and more options for monitoring, because always when you deal with data, you have to respect the regulation around the data, and also you need transparency about the applicable law of this processing chain. And this is really then the challenge of the sovereign data exchange, to have this interconnected view of the infrastructure layer and the data ecosystem layer. And therefore, the process of a GAIA X Foundation has been also part of the roadmap, and by mid of September, there is now the official note to establish the GAIA X AISBL as a legal entity in Belgium, according to the Belgian law. And the GAIA X Foundation is then responsible for the development of the governance framework, also the definition of the core concept and architectures as part of an ongoing community process, also to be part of the strategic research, innovation and deployment agenda within Europe, and to provide the repository, for example, as I said, the Federated catalog with all those certified service providers of the infrastructure ecosystem, and then also be an incubator to build up data spaces with the necessary technology. And in general, they have to take care about the assurance of quality standards and certification standards. And this is really what we need to understand here. GAIA X is not here to build up a new infrastructure ecosystem or to build up a new certification or to build up new rules. It's just to take all the puzzle pieces which are already there in Europe and bring them together, to harmonize it, to take care about interoperability, and to have a common governance, because this then will be really the DNA of a federated ecosystem. And so from my point of view, GAIA X is not another hyperscaler. It is not a European cloud. It's really an ecosystem to bring all the actors and all the players in Europe together, to join the forces, to work towards common market within Europe, and to serve for innovation. This is really the key message of GAIA X. Everyone is invited to join the GAIA X Foundation, and as far as I know, there are already a lot of applicants to be part of this impressive foundation and to be part of this activity. And I think by end of this year, the foundation will then be officially registered, and then let's go from there with a new speed in the next year. And there are a lot of information online, blogs, use cases, glossary. As I said, it's very agile, and from month to month, you will get new information on this project. And by end of the year, you will see also a reasonable maturity level on this association. And then we will move forward with the implementation of the federation services next year. But already in the beginning of next year, you will see a lot of demonstrators who are really showcasing the concept of GAIA X on a large scale. And you can just apply to GAIA X, and that's it from my side as an initial information on GAIA X. Thank you very much.
I think you're just in time. So thank you very much, Andreas, for this very deep overview of the project. And now the European Commission has as well an agenda for the data economy in order to regain European data sovereignty and enable data portability and interoperability. And Federico Milani, Deputy Head of Unit of the Data Policies and Innovation Unit at the European Commission, will introduce the vision and strategy of the European Commission.
Thank you very much. I've got a small presentation and a quick speech, also because Andreas, I think, has presented many of the concepts that I'm going to present as well through my presentation. So where do we start? We can start from actually in 2018, as basically GAIA X was mentioning. The 28th of May, the Commission has published a communication, which I will name only the title, because the title was extremely interesting, because it was toward the creation of a common European data space, where we were announcing the concept of the idea of creating a single market for data in Europe. This then was just a communication, but when the new commission took up and Commissioner Breton started his mandate, he immediately stressed the point of the importance of data and how he wanted to create an environment where data can be accessed, especially by our SMEs, and then it can create value for Europeans, including also developing the artificial intelligence applications. Why he said that? Well, basically, as it was mentioned already before, the data can transform all the sectors, and as well, it's crucial for the new application like artificial intelligence. On top of it, personal and non-personal data can be a source of innovation for new products and services, but it can tackle also societal challenges such as climate change, health, mobility, and it can make our lives and works easier and better. But why he believes that, and we believe that still Europe has got everything to play in the data economy? Well, it's just if you take into account the amount of data that is produced to this year and that one that will be produced in 2025, you will see that there will be a huge amount of data that is going to be produced, and most of it is going to be industrial data, where Europe has got everything to play since of its strong presence in the industrial sector. On top of it, as was mentioned before, most of the processing of the data will become then in IoT devices, so what we call at the edge. And therefore, also this major shift will help the Europes to, if they kickstart and they start their initiative and to work towards it to become and to be competitive. It's not as our commissioner says several times, it's not a lost battle like the social media data. It's a new battle to be, a new war to be won in the future. This is confirmed also by a survey that the MIT has done in January and February, but where they interview 1,000 companies globally, so in all the continent, where they ask several questions on what is their views on the use of data, and which are, for example, in this question, what are the greatest constraints to their companies to use AI. And as you can see, apart from identify business processes that AI can be used, which we, as the European Commission, cannot do much. The other issues that they identify is the availability of data, the shortage of data scientists, some regulatory and security concerns. So who can, if I share the data, who is going to use it, what are the constraints that they can impose in they use my data, and then the high cost of technologies. With the data strategy that we've published the 19th of February 2020, we actually exactly identified a number of objectives that we would like to achieve. And first of all, we took back the concept of creating a single market for data, where data can flow within the EU and across sector. There should be then high availability of high quality data to create and innovate, but we should respect, as it was mentioned also before, the rules and the values, European rules and values. So we should not go against all the rules and the values that European has just put in place. But there should be also probably clear rules that will allow that the data, as it was mentioned also by Andreas, can be used in a way where the data holders and the data users knows what they can do and for which purpose the data is being used. So we want to create trust between the data user and the data holders and the data users, so that data can be shared in a trusted and safe manner. These are the problems, in fact, that we have identified. First of all, there is a lack of European data processing and storage solution. It has been already mentioned why it's important to have a data infrastructure, an infrastructure for processing and storing data. We want to make sure, as again Commissioner Breton is mentioning all the time, that if the data is stored or that is processed in Europe, the organization that is storing and processing the data will fully respect rules and values, European values. The second point is that there is not enough available for the use. So there, what we are trying to do is to see if we can make available more public sector data, but also we are looking of reasons why there is a low uptake of voluntary data sharing among companies. And then there is also another point that we've identified, which then was even more highlighted by the COVID crisis, is that there is no clarity of the use of private sector for the common good. This is also because there is an absence of comprehensive data governance approaches, and there are legal and technical barriers, especially across sectors, and technically, as we mentioned again before, by standardization, interoperability between the data, the sharing of data, the services that are made available for processing and storing the data. There is also, from the personal data point of view, imperfect data portability mechanism. As many of you might know, the GDPR allows the users to access the data and to require the data the user has got the possibility to require to the company that is holding their data to have the full access to their data. but the mechanisms that are put in place yet are not easy and are not easy to implement. There's also skills of shortages and low data literacy, and more we've got member states that are looking at data sharings and what needs to be done in order to improve and to solve some or several of those the problems that I've mentioned. So there is a risk of fragmenting even more the single market and causing therefore even more problems and issues for companies, because they will then have to apply different rules and laws and regulation depending on the market where they are, in the nation where they are working. So we identified three main pillars through which we want to deploy the data strategy. The first one is a legislative framework, where we mention basically three legal initiatives. I will mention two very quickly. The first one is dealing with data held by the public sector, where we are going to set up a list of high-value data sets in the field, for example, of geospatial, environmental, company registries, mobilities, weather and meteorological information, where we are going to request to the member states to make that data sets machine readable and available for free for everybody, so that also small and medium enterprises that would need or are thinking of using such a data will have access for free to that data in a machine readable format. We are going to also identify a number of high impact projects on European data spaces and a federated cloud infrastructure, where we are hoping to get 4 to 6 billion of total investment, out of which 2 billion should be coming from European programs, again depending on the budget that is under discussion currently. We are also looking at competencies, so we are looking at investing on digital skills and data literacy, and dedicated capacity building for SME, so to support again the lack of skills in the data processing and data analytics. And then there is the rollout of European common data spaces in crucial economic sector, and there we have identified a number of sectors. And I finish with my slides that has got different colors and a different structure, but it's pretty much similar to what has been presented so far, because it tries to summarize what we would like to see and what we think is a common European data space. First of all, a common European data space, it's not a platform. So it's not a data lake for people that knows what is a data lake. So where everybody dump their data and everybody can use their data, but it's a space, and we call it space because it's a place where data can be shared, but can be shared not only applying specific rules and assuring that the data holder has got full control of the data on who is processing it, who's accessing it, and if possible, as mentioned before, he can take advantage from the data that has been produced. We have identified in the data strategy the 9 data spaces that has mentioned here, but they are not the only one. What it's important to say is that we are looking that those data spaces will not become a silos. So our major interest is also to identify building blocks, we call them in a sort of way, that will allow interoperability between the building blocks, so that data that for the health or the health sectors or the other sectors can be used, and companies can access to the data from different sectors, so that also the cross activities between the various sectors will be allowed. On top of it, we've got the high-value data sets that I mentioned before that will be made accessible, and also the development of personal data spaces where users can place their data and make it accessible in exchange of services, for example. Finally, we've got the technical infrastructure for data spaces, where we do not have only a cloud infrastructure, but we are looking also at the next stage, so cloud to edge infrastructure. I mentioned here also the high performance computing, and also all the initiatives that we are starting through Digital Europe program to use and experiment with the data, which are the new AI testing and experimentation facilities. As you can see, and I assure you I didn't share my presentation with Andrew, the previous speakers, there are a lot of commonalities between the two ideas on what should be a common European data space. And with that, I finished, and thanks to you.
Thank you, Mr. Milani, for this very interesting presentation as well. Now, the GAIA X initiative, as you both mentioned, describes more than 30 use cases in several areas. Mobility is one of them. And I will now leave the floor to Nick Scarman, Project Director, Economy of Things at Robert Bosch, who will give us his insight on how GAIA X initiative will be an enabler of new businesses. But unfortunately, he's one of the remote speakers, but we are facing some technical issues. So we will try to have a speech over the phone, and we ask for your kind understanding with this technical issue. So Nick, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, first of all, my apologies due to company internal travel restrictions. I'm not able to come to Corona reasons to Luxembourg myself, and unfortunately we have some Microsoft Teams problems somewhere, so I need to talk to you via phone, so I hope you can hear me well. I'd like to talk basically about three things and how they fit together. First of all, about our research project at Bosch, which is called Economy of Things. So on the slide 1, you have an internet link, so you're very much invited to take a look at what we're doing there. I think our research there and principles are quite relevant because they fit very, very well to the requirements we find at GAIA X. And I additionally think that GAIA X needs some new ideas and new approaches to make it really a success. And in the end, I'd like to, after I sketched what we see in the economy of things and how it fits to GAIA X, I briefly want to talk about once GAIA X is ready and running, what can we do with it from the perspective of Bosch. Can you go to slide 2, please? Now, you've already seen the X from GAIA X several times now. And what you see here are some user requirements from the community on GAIA X. And not surprisingly, there's a lot of talk about trustworthy infrastructure, and so forth. And this is all very important, but what I find striking is that one very important requirement is not mentioned here, and I think it's because it looks so obvious, but it's a very demanding requirement. And can you go to slide 4, please? When we talk about using GAIA X as a company, for example, to sell services and data, it's quite clear that we want to have one big platform. obvious that two small platforms, for example, do not have the same effect as a user or producer of data than one big platform. And it's a kind of a self-amplifying circuit. So the more users are on a platform, the more providers will be there, and if there are more providers, then the number of users will increase up as well, because it's more attractive. And this effect is called a network effect. So we believe that GAIA X, one big GAIA X platform for Europe, is far more valuable than two small ones. If you go to slide 3, please. So these network effects lead to a very interesting situation where we end with a monopoly. So what we want to build is something quite dangerous in GAIA X, I would say. We want to build one big platform, and what you see here in this triangle is we did a lot of simulations on platform monopolies. And it turns out that if you start with a large number of platforms and you have network effects like I said before, you always end up in a situation where you have one big platform player. And we see that in the B2C area already, where we have very problematic effects that big platform companies get a large market share. And if you have that situation and this platform is owned by a proprietary company, the other players, the users of the platform, sooner or later get big problems. So we have if you go to slide 5, please. We have a situation where typically, at least in the old school economy, people realize that every company wants to own a platform, but nobody wants to be locked in other platforms. And especially in the business-to-business area, the players really realize that. We have a situation, unlike in the B2C market, that platforms themselves provide a lot of benefits, so they are good by themselves, and the companies in the professional B2B area also know that. But we have some sort of deadlock. We need some sort of platform, but we don't want to be in a situation where we have, as a company, have to connect to another platform. So this deadlock is there, and we believe that we need to break this deadlock, and all this, the methods and ideas to break this deadlock, we call economy of things. And all these effects I was talking about are also valid for GAIA X. So we believe that there's a lot of ideas we can contribute to the GAIA X initiative to make it a success. If you go to slide 6, please. So to break this deadlock, and as I said, this is also true for GAIA X, we somehow have to solve a trilemma. And the trilemma basically consists of 3 elements. If we want in a B2B area want to use a platform, we need to have some centralized trusted infrastructure, logically centralized trusted infrastructure. So we want to have an immutable ground of truth, an immutable ledger. We want to have privacy-preserving computation. So we don't want to have a situation where the platform provider, for example, see all the metadata of the transaction being realized from the platform. And we don't want to have this also centralized in one proprietary entity. So the second part is logically centralized trusted infrastructure somehow has to be realized in a decentralized peer-to-peer network. And then one requirement, at least as Bosch, from our perspective, we have on GAIA X, that we want to make sure that there's no single proprietary entity controlling GAIA X, there should be no proprietary control point in such a system, and we want to have a very fine balanced cooperative governance. We make sure that if we at Bosch connect to such a platform like GAIA X, we need to know the governance system is such that we have a fair say and a fair vote in how this platform should behave. And the third very important thing to break this deadlock, we need very powerful incentives for stakeholders to build such a platform. We have the situation that we have potentially a lot of public funds, at least in Germany, for things like GAIA X. We have to make sure, or we need to know and realize that we are up against privately owned companies, the big platform players that also push into the B2B market. And we believe that, as I said, that we need to build a system where things can directly work together without a proprietary intermediary, and also the value of the network, in our case the value of GAIA X, is fairly distributed among the contributors. Can you go to slide 7, please? So I think what we really need to focus on at the GAIA X, I think we need to rethink the very old idea of the cooperative. So the cooperatives were used in housing or in the farming agriculture area, where a lot of incumbents and farmers and so forth, they joined together to build something together. And I think the idea of a cooperative also fits very well to GAIA X. And I think we should bring the cooperatives into the digital age with GAIA X. And then further, I think what is also very important is that we have to realize, and this is something we can show on slide 8, please, and that we have to make sure that GAIA X is well understood from the perspective that two things we have to realize. One is that we jointly, as European companies, have to cooperate. So we have to build this thing together in the morning, so to speak, and we compete with our services in the afternoon. So I think it needs to be perfectly clear that GAIA X is a cooperative ecosystem, and we have to make sure that these two perspectives are dealt with in this endeavor. So let's go to slide 9, please. So this is quite a complex slide, but also I think what's important to notice is that in GAIA X we have a interesting situation where we talk a lot of governance and about governance and standards, how the GAIA X ASBL should look like. But if you take a look at this this graph, it basically says you have two axes here. One is the governance axis, so it determines how decentralized the governance is, so how many people can contribute and also steer the system. And on the other axis, we have some sort of execution. It's a digital system, so the question here is who runs the system and who has, for example, the server where a marketplace is realized upon. And we think that you have to be to really build such a platform I talked earlier about with a few control points, which is the absolute requirement for a company to join, at least from the Bosch perspective. We have to do both. We have to build a system with a decentralized governance, but we also have to separate the power in computing. So we have to look into new computing paradigms like distributed ledger technology and multi-party computation to make sure that also the operation of the GAIA X system is decentralized. And we as Bosch are very much involved in GAIA X at the moment, so we spend a lot of resources and manpower to bring this GAIA X system into the areas or to meet the requirements I've been talking about. So I think we are not yet there. So it's quite challenging to bring all these ideas into the GAIA X communities, because we have this balance between bringing too much decentralization technology into GAIA X, which is quite new. So this blockchain, this real ledger technology is something new and not very well known in the classic industry. So that's important, but on the other hand side, if we do it too strongly, we'll get a problem that we have to deliver quickly. So GAIA X needs to be something that should be operational in the next 1 or 2 years. But on the other hand, if we do too little new technology or introduce too little new technology into GAIA X, I think we cannot meet the requirements I talked about earlier. So I was asking about or talking about a lot of requirements and open points. So I think from our perspective, GAIA X is a very important endeavor, but it's still very much in its infancy. But if we jointly work in these areas, I think we have a fair chance to make GAIA X a real world thing. Now, slide 10, please. Now, once we built that GAIA X system, what would be the idea, or why would we do it as Bosch, and what could we do it, or what could we realize on top of GAIA X? So, slide 11, please. So Bosch is obviously very much into automotive supply. And we noticed that obviously the mobility markets are getting more and more complex. So we have a higher risk of recalls. We have decreasing product life cycles. There are more and more variants in the cars. The cars are connected. We have more and more software-intensive systems. And we notice that the old paradigm where Bosch sells to an original equipment manufacturer and that's it, this paradigm doesn't work anymore. And especially if you go to slide 12, please, especially under the light that the systems and cars and the interconnected car systems get more and more complex, we have to make sure that the failure costs that occur, since no system is perfect by itself, need to be faster corrected. So one of the use cases we are pushing into GAIA X is based on the idea that if we have more and more software-intensive systems that span different suppliers, different original equipment manufacturers, and if there's a failure, we very quickly need to analyze that failure and find the root cause. And obviously we have the problem that as soon as we talk to or have a situation where many entities, everybody has their own data silo, and we need somehow to connect these silos together to find a root cause in a failure, we need to have a platform that can do it. We need to have a platform that makes sure that if we, for example, give some data on an ECU, a control unit for a car, to a supplier, and then this supplier connects it to other information from the value stream, we have to make sure that the usage policy of this data is matched. So we believe once GAIA X is ready, it will very well fit to have a company and industry spanning data connector and data marketplace where we can share data on failures and far quicker find out where the failure and where the root cause is than we can today. Slide 13. And it's clear that once we have such a system, the cost reductions will be tremendous. So there's a huge potential to correct failures quicker and more cheaper than we can do it today. So on this slide, you basically only just see a very short timeline. With that, I also only want to show that at Bosch we are thinking about this idea for some time now. But what was missing was a neutral platform layer that was able to connect the industry, the automotive industry. And we believe that GAIA X will be such a layer. And for this field quality management use case I now briefly sketched, we plan to introduce that in GAIA X with a publicly funded project and realize it on GAIA X. Slide 14, please. So that sums up my presentation. So basically, I wanted to show you that we, as a company, see GAIA X as hugely important. But we also have to make, or I also wanted to make clear that it's far from complete. GAIA X needs a lot of work and a lot of thought to become the reality. But I think it's a worthwhile reality. So thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Skarman. We'd like now to go to the roundtable discussion. It is time to open this discussion on the GAIA X initiative. And now we'll hand over the mic to Charlotte Boutelier, Head of Marketing at Forest, who will moderate our today's roundtable and introduce our panelists.
First, thank you to the organizers for having us today. I am very delighted to be able to host what promises to be a very interesting panel discussions. The timing is short, but I'm sure we can go deeper into the topic. To answer your question, Nick, the audience already asked some questions and I integrated them in the preparation of the discussion we will have now. So we did not forget you. Your question will be tackled right now. We already listened to Andreas Weiss. Thank you for joining the panel discussion too. To Federico Milani, thank you too. Nick Sharman, stay with us. Paul Timus is with us too. Paul, are you with us?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you reasonably well.
Okay, super great. We have also Fabrice Hansen. So Fabrice is representing Porvoot, an innovative Luxembourg-based industry. And we also have Mario Grotz. Welcome, Mario, who is Director General for Research, Intellectual Property and New Technologies at the Ministry of the Economy in Luxembourg. Paul Timus, you are joining us from which country, Paul? Paul?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yes, from which country are you joining us?
A bit closer, because I'm getting your sound through the telephone.
No problem. From which country are you joining us from now?
I'm currently near Brussels.
Near Brussels, great. So you are a research associate at the University of Oxford, I'm right?
Yes, correct, indeed,
okay.
at the European University in Cyprus. Yeah.
Perfect. So, Andreas, you said in your speech that the three pillars of the GAIA X project, among the three pillars, there is a notion of European sovereignty. So the idea of GAIA X is to develop a data infrastructure for Europe, which is a very strategic project when we know that if tomorrow we cut off access to Amazon, to Google, a large part of the public services and other companies will stop actually. So definitely there is a need for European sovereignty, but maybe I will ask the question because of the concept to Paul. How we create a European sovereignty, and why do we need that today in Europe?
Thank you very much for that question, and let me say a few words about it. GAIA X is a clear example of trying to create what is called data sovereignty, or actually strategic autonomy in a digital space where we are talking about data. And so you may wonder, what is all this sovereignty actually about? And we all intuitively perhaps have an idea, but it's really about traditionally about things like your territory, the people that are living there, your natural resources. It's about having, as a state, authority towards your citizens recognizing the state. That's called internal legitimacy. And it's also as a state being accepted by foreign states, the recognition there, which is called external legitimacy. And it's all very nice, this sovereignty, but the real question is, of course, how do you make it happen? And that's what strategic autonomy is about. Strategic autonomy is, you might say, where sovereignty is the end, then strategic autonomy are the means. How do you realize it? And here, clearly, to safeguard our sovereignty in data, that's what GAIA X is about, data sovereignty. But in fact, there's more to it, because if we think about our sovereignty, it's about the way we live in the economy and in the society and in democracy. So it's really wide what we talk about in sovereignty, wider than GAIA X. So it is many areas, but let me just illustrate two particularly interesting ones next to the industrial one. Let's take health and public services. You know, these are two areas with sensitive data. They concern us as people. They concern also the state. And it's clear that in both areas, it's about data that belongs really to us. I mean, here, in fact, I can quote Commissioner Breton, who recently said, European data should be stored and processed in Europe. They belong to us. And so it shows that when we talk about data sovereignty, we need to have things like are happening in GAIA X. You need to have control on your standards, on your technology, on the specifications. But also, these two areas show that it goes well beyond just kind of these technical things like the specifications and the standard. They are part of your strategic autonomy. But it's also about making use of other policies like public procurement for health and public services. Or specific ways that we want to implement the GDPR in those sensitive areas. So I think these kind of areas, they show that when we talk about strategic autonomy, we talk about data sovereignty, but we actually talk about more. We talk about the things that we think belong to us. And so some people actually say data are part of sovereignty. And what we do with the data should also be part of what belongs to us. AI, for example, because that's about jobs and trust, security and privacy, and related things like security assurance and certification. There are also things that people would say, well, that belongs to us. That's part of strategic autonomy. That's part of building trust. And that's actually not the case today, that it belongs to us. As other speakers have eloquently shown, all of these items today are largely in the hands of just a few players. And they are largely not European players either, they are foreign players. And the future is open, there's a lot to be developed, but I think Europe is clearly saying that future in the economy and in society and democracy, that belongs to us. We should have a stay in that. So now we are talking about liberating data, liberating the cloud, liberating the apps, liberating the app stores, not to forget, so that there is an end to this capture, and the future is not captured by others, but is captured by Europeans. And so that's really what it is about. Ultimately, if you would ask what is the benefit of strategic autonomy, well, it's to keep the future in our own hands, whether this is in economy or in societal issues or in democracy. So let me stop there. That's, I think, what strategic autonomy is about. And GAIA X is a very important building stone in larger strategic autonomy for Europe.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, you're right. I think the project is not about creating a European data space. It's much more, it's to create maybe new bases for new ecosystems. You mentioned the benefits for the public services and the health sector, but obviously it's two examples among a lot of others. Maybe we can go to the more operational part. What could be the impact of this new framework on businesses, Mr. Hansen? Paul Wurth Group is active worldwide, and you favor connected solutions. So what we talk with Nick Skrauman about the new economy of things, you must be very aware of it. In the development of the strategy, you went through a digital transformation. So I think there are a lot of things to say about it. So what is at stakes for you with this GAIA X project, and what maybe are the constraints of such a project?
Okay, so let's say for us, for Paul Wurth, as I would say a global player, I would say to deliver equipment to iron and steel industry, GAIA X is an opportunity, I would say, to speed up and I would say deploy faster, I would say, the digital solutions, mainly in Europe. Let's say Europe is one of the most complex, I would say, part of the world where we have to deploy digital solutions. Let's say in other regions like Russia or China, at least the rules are clear. So we have hope that GAIA X will, I would say, make easier our life to at least to define solutions for our European customers. I would say that sovereignty has always been in the center of our digital transformation. So I've been pushed by, I would say, our legal officer to try to use or maximize the use of European solutions to embed into our equipment. But when we come to the cloud solution, it becomes, I would say, more difficult to find really independent solutions.
Do you have an example? Maybe,
Yeah, I would say we want to provide connected services. I would say we deliver equipment and we provide, let's say, additional services to monitor the health, I would say, of the equipment, to also to provide process optimization solutions to our customers. And we deal there with, I would say, industrial data. So industrial data, we are not in the B2C, we are in the B2B. And this data, as already mentioned by the previous speakers, can be quite sensitive data. So in terms of, let's say, IP, if we speak about process optimization, but if we speak about equipment status, availability, this can have also an impact on the financial results of companies. So these are quite sensitive data. So that's why we really believe that GAIA X will help us in the future, and we are happy that there will be some at least clear rules to establish our digital solutions.
Okay, thank you. To go further, maybe with the rules, you talk about the legal framework, and we have different initiatives that help to launch this project from different countries. We have the chance to count about the participation of Federico Milani today from the European Commission. There were questions from the audience, and I also noted this point during the preparation. So I think it's really important to answer this. So the European Commission also have initiatives to create a single market for data, but you also lead at the same time other initiatives. I can mention maybe the EuroHPC, the GAIA, and for education, the Future Internet Platform, FIWARE. So the main question that could be asked to you right now is, where does the European Commission stand regarding the adoption of a European data space? And more than that, comparing to all the projects that you currently have, how GAIA X can coexist? What is the point? What is the difference? How it differs?
Okay, if we start from the concept that the European Commission would like to create a single market for data, there are a fragmentation which is legislative, so member states are developing their own legislation on access and sharing the data, but there is also a fragmentation of the technical solutions that are offered to the people that want to participate in data sharing. So the activities of GAIA X, as you've seen, by federating the various major stakeholders in data sharing and data processing, can really offer technical solutions that will tackle the fragmentation, basically, of the market, of the technical or the infrastructure in the market. And I'm not only talking about the hardware infrastructure, so from one side, the cloud services, the HPC, as you are mentioning, but also what was mentioned before, the standards, the definition of technical specification, let's call it in this way, for services, so that who will want to develop data spaces or participate to data spaces will have the possibility of using the same technical specification, not to reinvent the wheel, and allow interoperability between the various data spaces that we mention. Which is the instruments that we are going to use? Most probably we are going to use, as mentioned, the Digital Europe program, where we are going to finance both aspects, the creation or the federation of the infrastructure, but also the creation of the data spaces. And there we are also planning to have a sort of support center where we are going again, hoping to have the major players. You mentioned some, GAIA X is another one, so the freeware activities and initiatives that we already have, getting together in defining what we call the building blocks, the main services that each data space will need in order to be develop and become effective and working. And this is how we see it.
Thank you for your answer. So finally, GAIA X will be part of the strategy, and you will take the benefits of this project to go ahead with other initiatives and to create this single market. Okay, great. So to come back maybe on a part of what the Minister of the Economy, Franz Fayot, said, Luxembourg launched a data-driven innovation strategy. So we have the point of view from the European Commission. Maybe to have the Luxembourg's point of view, I'm referring to Mr. Mayo-Grotz. What is the strategy, how GAIA X can be part of the overall country strategy?
Yes, thank you for this question. I mean, we already started more than 2 years ago in order to develop the Luxembourg data innovation strategy, as we are a front runner, or was seen as a front runner in digital technologies, and we as a country, of course, want to keep the pace and stay a front runner in that area. I think at that point of time we had 3 main observations, and it's nothing new. Digital technologies, digital platforms are transforming the way we live and the way we work. Of course, data is one of the most valuable resources, and it's also the essential driver for future growth. And the third observation is that you need to have a proactive government and a clear government with strategy in order to act as a digital innovator. So these 3 observations led us to develop a strategy, which is at the end what we wanted to achieve is really building the ecosystem also in Luxembourg in order to drive future growth by utilization, by using data. And the strategy today is building on 3 pillars. The first pillar is on infrastructure. Not going into detail, but of course the HPC infrastructure is a very important element of the infrastructure. We already have good connectivity, good latency, very performing data centers, but very clearly the HPC computing center is a very important steps, but it's not about really the infrastructure itself. It's more building a competence center around the HPC. The idea is clearly to democratize the use of HPC by also, for example, building an access portal for SMEs to use HPC capacity, but also to building models based on the usage of the HPC. So the idea is clearly to build around this different infrastructure a competence center which really allows all types of actors, not only public research, but also industry and SMEs to use HPC. Of course, we are very interested in the GAIA X initiative and also in the Federated Cloud initiative, and we will also be one of the first countries who will sign the declaration on the Federated Cloud initiative in order to make sure that, again, Luxembourg is acting as a front runner in these areas. The second pillar of the strategy is really about experimentation and testbeds, and it has already been mentioned several times here that testbeds are extremely important. It's not only about the data, but at the end it's about how you can use the different sources of data and develop new business models. So here again, what we try to do for Luxembourg is to build our own, I would say, national data exchange platform. So it's not, as it has been mentioned before, it's not a data lake, but it is some kind of service platform where we can help the different actors, support the different actors in order to use the data. Today, what you can see, you have a lot of data produced by the public sector, by the ministries, by public administration. You have a lot of data produced by the research actors, public research actors, but also by companies. And what you see is it's quite difficult to experiment today with this data because the data is not interoperable. The companies, all the actors do not know how to structure the data, how to anonymize the data, to pseudonymize the data, how to build up the governance of the data in order to make it compatible with GDPR. So what we would like to set up is really a national platform, service platform, which will help all the different actors in order to develop experimentation and test beds around some topics. But again, it's not a generic platform, but we need to build also there on use cases. And what we have today identified 3 use cases, which is the energy use case, the use case on healthcare, and the third use case on space. And we are actively discussing today with the actors how we really can develop this test beds in these three areas. Last point, very short, is more on regulatory and financing aspects. Of course, we need to make sure that we have the best or one of the best regulatory environment. We need to make sure that we have all legislation in place, for example, for the secondary use of data. And the last point is also on the investment. I think traditional investments models, financing models are quite difficult to implement. So we need to make sure that for this kind of innovation, we develop new tools in order to support the companies in the financing of these test beds. So these are the 3 main pillars, very shortly explained. And again, with the strategy, it is of course a living strategy which needs to be adapted constantly. But with this strategy, we really hope that we can also in the future play a role as a front runner in the digital transformation in Europe.
Okay, thank you. So you said you're beginning the strategy 2 years ago. You said you're beginning with the innovation strategy 2 years ago at the government, and that you will be signing the Federated Cloud Initiative. You are on a daily basis in contact with Luxembourg-based companies. What are the pros and cons for this project? Did you already talk with a lot of companies?
Yes, of course. It's our daily business to talk with the companies, and especially as a small countries, we have the advantage to be probably more in contact with our companies than other countries can do. We are discussing these projects now for several months with our companies. what is the, let's say, the negative point on the Luxembourg side is that a lot of companies today face difficulties to integrate digital technologies. And also when we look at the European benchmark, we see that this is really where we are ranked less high than in other areas. So we need really to make a lot of effort in that respect. It's very important at the end to integrate our companies in this European initiatives, but it's right now it's very important to make our companies fit for this initiative. So what we do today is also trying to launch calls on the national level in order to educate the companies to participate in these kind of initiatives, in order to, in a second step, to make them fit for the European projects. It's quite difficult sometimes for smaller companies to integrate this European initiative. So it's one of our main tasks to educate the companies in a first step and then help them to integrate these European very important initiatives.
Thank you very much for answering the question. You said that the difficulties that the Luxembourg-based company can meet is with the integration of the technology. I think that if we meet this problem at the level of the Luxembourg with other countries can be another concern. Maybe Andreas Weiss, you can help us because you had this technical approach during your keynote speech. How can we convince companies to migrate to GAIA X? How can we help them technically?
I'm always getting asked, what is in for me in terms from a business side? And I always answer, no, you have to think, what is in for us? What can, and we had this term by Nick about this competition. It is collaboration and competition at the same time. So GAIA X by itself is a multi-stakeholder approach and is not a kind of European cloud, as I said initially, and so therefore you don't have to move into GAIA X. You should be part of GAIA X, whatever you do, and no one should wait to do something in the digital space because everything is already there. You don't need GAIA X to start with a digital transformation. You don't need GAIA X to build up your knowledge, to invest into skills. To work with projects on data analytics and data monetization, just go ahead. But when you want to set it up on a large scale, if you want to extend it, if you want to build up platforms, if you want to build digital groups who are working together, then at a certain time, you will really see the advantages of GAIA X by having an entity who's taking care about a suggestion for the governance, to take care about rules which might be applied on a GAIA X ecosystem. And we still have the term the federation. So GAIA X by itself is not a huge system. It is an offering to build up digital data infrastructures and ecosystems. But of course, therefore, you need anyone who is taking care about all these tiny questions about code of conducts and what kind of certification is applicable, how to work towards an interoperable infrastructure, how to define standards, and so on and so on. Therefore, you need this community approach. You need to bring all these expertise together, and you need to build up this informational package and also the technical services, as I said, like the federation services, who are still intend to be open source. So anyone can have a look at it, anyone can take it. But at a certain time, there will be a clear rule. If you want to award your ecosystem as a GAIA X ecosystem, you have to comply to the rules which are exposed by the community and which are mandated then by the association. And so the association by itself is not a business company. It's a non-profit organization to bring people together to discuss the requirements and to build an architectural pattern and also bring together workforces for the technical solutions. And in some extent, they must operate, for example, the catalog, because there should be one entity who is doing the initial ramp up and who is also taking care about the accreditation to be awarded as a certified GAIA X service, for example. But then you can replicate them through all the other catalogs, whatever. And this is really the core idea of GAIA X from my point of view.
Thank you very much. So yes, it is a very inclusive project, actually. So you have to have your own strategy, your own goal, and then you decide to take part to this project that you're launching. And a question that we have from the audience, and this help making the transition. If we have a lot of companies joining from different countries, how to target a good balance? Maybe Federico, this is a question for you. How to target a good balance and competition between multiple countries, multiple technological players and competitors, multiple technical views and nuances, and remain really competitive with single suppliers, having a more single-sided approach? How to stay competitive in this
It's not an easy question. Well, our approach, it's more or less the same approach of GAIA X, even if we are coming from a different point of view, which is that the data space should be as open as possible, which doesn't mean that the data it's open to everybody. It means that everybody should be allowed to participate to the data space. In order to build that, and to make sure that that is possible, you need common standards, you need definition of services which could be interoperable, so that you are not ending up in a multi-vendor lock-in, in a lock-in situation, like a multi-vendor environment where you can choose your service provider. And this is a difficult process that we are going to tackle. This is why we are foreseeing European Commission funding for doing that through the Digital Europe program. It will be usually done through grants, at least for the beginning, so to create a starting point. And on top of it, apart from the technical infrastructure, there will be then a data governance systems or data spaces governance systems that should be put in place. We do not have there the recipe or conditions that we put in place. Let's see what's coming up from the bottom.
Thank you very much. It could be great to approach this from maybe an operational view. Then, Fabrice, the next question will be for you. How an innovating industry such as yours could reasonably convince conservative, maybe customers, to trust a new system when it comes to the management, governance of their data?
Well, first, to enable, I would say, digital solutions, you have to share the data. So that's, I would say, the main problem now we encounter. Let's say, without having this legal framework about the data ownership, for example, we have case by case to discuss contractually with each customer. We have to establish contracts, NDAs. We lose a lot of time doing this. Of course, we also have to I would say, explain the cybersecurity technology we put in place to protect the data. But then it's not only about the raw data, it's also about, when we speak about machine learning, who is the owner of the data-driven model that has been built based on raw data belonging to one customer or belonging to several customers. So I would say that having let's say, the legal and technical framework to propose at least a solution to not start from scratch, but at least to start from a framework that is existing, I would say should make life easier for both parties.
So for you, in what way does GAIA X answer this need as an industrial? It's only the fact to have a European cloud and to have all the data stored in a same entity, or Is it much more to maybe convince other clients to come, maybe to Luxembourg to work with Paul Wurth?
Yes, clear. I would say for the moment, let's say for many European customers, they even prefer to miss the digitalization opportunity than to share the data. So that's at least in our, I would say, conservative iron and steel industry. So I would say that so for the moment, our digital solutions, we host them on our infrastructure. And that's something we can convince, I would say, our customers, even, of course, if we are less, I would say, experienced than a true cloud provider. So having maybe a true cloud solution in Luxembourg, available in Luxembourg or even in Europe, will help us to convince our customers. And of course, there will not be, as a global player, there will not be just one solution. We have to deal with the different, I would say, rules and laws of the different regions of the world. And we hope that GAIA X will be, I would say, the enabler for the Europe.
Thank you very much. Nick, you with me?
Yeah.
Yes. So what are the challenges taken up by a company, and how do we address them through the technology? I think you already mentioned it in your keynote speech, but as we are going back to the question, how are we able to build a system such as GAIA X?
Yeah, you're right. I already mentioned it very briefly, but I think again we need to have a mixture between proven technologies which have a track record and new technologies which should be decentralized. Yeah, I think one of the challenges is that we don't want to have a monopolistic platform where one entity, one company also have control over it. And we have to make sure this control is decentralized among the participants, and we can do this on the one hand side through new decentralized technology like multi-party computation, self-sovereign identity, and distributed ledger technology. So we have to use these technologies and industrialize them. And again, I think we also have to make sure that governance of GAIA X, so the entity itself, has a very finely balanced participation and voting rules. So we need also knowledge from game theoretic background to really build a decentralized system.
Thank you very much, Nick, for the precision. As we are looking into the different operational view that we can have, so we mentioned the mobility, we mentioned the industry 4.0. Maybe another view from one of Luxembourg's planned pillars for 5G. Maybe Mario Gross, you could have some words about it, how GAIA X can help support this kind of initiative with 5G.
I mean, connectivity is crucial in all that. If we want to develop the next business models based on with Industry 4.0, then of course IoT and connectivity is extremely important. And again, what we try to do in that respect also is to deploy as soon as possible the 5G network in Luxembourg. We had just the auction of the frequency rights, and we will also deploy the antennas hopefully very soon. I hope with all the public discussion, we nevertheless will be able to deploy this network very soon and very, very smoothly. And then again, we need to build test beds using 5G, using the cloud, and using other general purpose technologies. And for me, it's always coming back to the test beds. How can we integrate companies in test beds? How can we make sure that they work together, that they exchange data, that we have the right services in place in order to really have a full-fledged ecosystem. And at the end, it's all about the ecosystem, and 5G is part of that ecosystem too.
Thank you very much. We have a question from the audience. So we tackle different operational reviews. So there is concretely a need for a GAIA X project and for collaboration from all the companies based in Europe to commit together to go further and to build the future, which is linked to a data-driven economy and to a lot of an economy of things, to connectivity. We have a question for you, Andreas Weiss. Do the GAIA X promoters also have a look into possible business models allowing monetization of data and services? We have an example with the PSD2. They forced the bank to give access for free to third parties. Will GAIA X be based on a for free model?
Well, as I said, first of all, it is. Won't work. Stay green. Yes. Good. Well, I think this shouldn't be now in scope for GAIA X to talk about business models, at least in the core of GAIA X. Therefore, I think we need these hubs, the hubs who are more the representatives of the business users, who are looking for their emerging business models, and this should be then the feedback loop to align the technical setup of GAIA X according to the needs of the business. For example, setting up data spaces. And just to say, data spaces are more a virtual construct. It is not that everyone is putting his data together into one storage device. It's just to build logical relationships between data which might be used together, and then we still keep the sovereignty aspect by this, that everyone who's going to open his data for a data space is still in the driver's seat also to finish this relation to this data space, if he thinks the question on intellectual property should always be by those parties who are owner of the data, or there's any other sharing mechanism behind it. We have to learn about what the level of sharing is. And as part of the GAIA X roadmap, I think the next stage, let me say GAIA X 1.0, will be next year, by mid of next year, that we have the federation services in place, that the technical implementation of the core functionality can be used by the users. And in the meantime, or in parallel, we have a set of demonstrators who are really showcasing how GAIA X can work, what are the benefits. And this should then incubate the discussion how to make more out of it. And what we would like to see is still that GAIA X is not just an initiative for the large companies. They can do it by their own. We need the engagement of the SMEs. We need the engagement of the innovation part, the agility of the SMEs to be part of it. But SMEs, they cannot do all these mutual contracting situations. And we just recently launched a new initiative, Cloud Natives, because there are a lot of companies, and these are typically smaller companies from 2 to 100 people, who don't care about data center management, who don't care about the provisioning of servers. They just say, there is a public cloud, and we take this as a core, and then we build our functional models on top of it. But therefore, we need also the guarantee that the underlying technology is safe and is also according to the standards which are requested by the customer. If they don't can provide an appropriate answer on this, they have a lot of work to convince a customer to make use of the service, because there's so much uncertainty about the services on a lower level. And there GAIA X is really helpful. If there is a clear governance and clear rules and policies and rules which are applied, then all the SMEs are more capable to serve also to the large customers a reasonable level of maturity and also certainty on these services. This is where we think there we can find some real effects. And yeah, let's go from there. GAIA X is not yet finished, it just started.
Yes, you just mentioned it. The topic is quite broad, and we already had a very good overview for our first conference in Luxembourg. Thank you so much. Paul, are you with me? Paul? Hello? Oh, I think he's...
Yeah,
Oh, you're... Sorry. Yes, Paul. So we went through many different polls. Maybe I would like to end the panel discussion with a notion that we can maybe discuss with you, because you also worked for the European Commission, and you are now a research associate at the University of Oxford. We said that we are working for the future to build ecosystems. We are currently building a data-driven future, actually, and having a federated, trusted cloud space could be seen as the early stages of a European dream, no?
Yeah, perhaps to some extent. You know, at the time there was the American dream. Do you hear me?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so at the time we were talking about the American dream, and that was kind of like discovering that was like discovering a new land, and to some extent, actually, you might say here, perhaps we are indeed discovering a new land also in Europe, and which is the digital territory, the digital assets, and we, I think, realize how important data are in the digital world. They are really a European resource, and so we discover that. And it's not only data; it's also other things. Let me give another example. We have the European domain name .eu. Who owns .eu? Well, all the citizens and all the businesses of Europe. So that's a new digital asset that we have. And there will be more of these kind of assets that we will discover in the future, and where people will say, well, that is actually something that really is part of what we can realize in Europe. It's part of that European dream. And actually that is not so new, because 75 years ago already the founders of the European Union said, you know, there's a lot to create jointly in Europe, and the single market is also something that is of everybody. So yeah, I think to some degree you might take an optimistic approach here and say, like we had the American dream, we have at least elements of a European dream.
Hello, Paul?
Yes, hello.
Yes,
can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you. You can continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, as you said, data is very important. They are defining the future of our industry. They are defining the different strategy that have come recently this year with artificial intelligence-based solutions, for instance, and also for the finance sector, it will be very important. I think because the topic is so broad, we need to have other conference to go in depth with maybe practical use case. I think there are a lot of good things coming with the GAIA X project, and we just demonstrated that it can have benefits for a lot of different sectors. So thank you for having us for the panel discussion. Thank you to these great experts that are with us today, and those who are remotely. I will let maybe Mr. Reding conclude the conference.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yes, time is flying, so we have to conclude. GAIA X project is moving really fast. We have seen it, and as mentioned by Andreas, GAIA X Foundation, Association Internationale Sans But Lucratif, has been set up in Brussels on September 15, with 22 founding German and French members. So the GAIA X founders are aimed to establish a culture of trust, knowledge exchange, and transparency. We have heard the call of Minister Franz Fayot. Our three associations, so Cloud Community Europe, ICT Luxembourg, and FEDIL, we are fully committed to support this initiative. So we invite all interested companies, associations, universities to join the project. We will set up in next weeks a working group in Luxembourg under the patronage of our associations. And Andreas told me we should have as first objective to develop a Luxembourgish GAIA X node. So I hope you will help us. Luxembourg is also one of the 3 European capitals of the European Union and seat of European Union institutions. On top, European Commission has committed to create a digital pole in Luxembourg. In Luxembourg, we have built a very rich and diversified ecosystems, a renowned financial place. We have champions in the industry. Our university and research center have built a strong international reputation, and Luxembourg is a startup nation. So as ecosystems, we have to, and we will, fully support GAIA X initiatives. GAIA X will be a keystone, as you said, Mario, of the data economy. We have no choice and no time to waste. It's certainly not too late. New generation technology and stage is emerging. And if we do not act tomorrow, as you said, Andreas, we will lose the freedom of choice. Europe is emerging stronger from the crisis. We will build together a true single digital market based on European values shared by 500 million of citizens. And after the Snowden revelations, we have been able to build a stronger GDPR framework. Today, this framework is now a worldwide standard and reference. Tomorrow, the 4 GAIA X principles, openness, interoperability, transparency, and trust, should probably become universal principles. A GAIA X summit will be organized on 18th and 19th of November. We will follow up closely the project, and we will organize the 3 associations a second GAIA X conference in Luxembourg in the first half of next year. And we hope it will be a physical one without the necessity to activate a B plan. Thank you for having managed this B plan. Dear speakers, I would like to thank you warmly for the wonderful contribution to this conference, for sharing with us your knowledge, and for the open discussion during the panel. Thank you for your support. I would also like to thank warmly Fedil and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this conference. Special thanks to Charlotte for moderating the panel, and Céline for the coordination of this event. And last but not least, Raphael, for organizing the agenda. Thank you for this organization of this conference, and see you soon. And just perhaps 2 words for Céline, practical information.
Thank you very much, Yves. I just would like to inform you that the slide will be available on Fedil website and Cloud Community Europe website as well in the next few days. And you will have the opportunity to play the video if you would like to listen again to some presentation as well. And you have my contact detail on the slide, so do not hesitate to reach out if you'd like to join the initiative and have more information. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.